Since I've gained access to Rocor's closed alpha, I've been put in a unique position, where I can talk about the closed alpha as it's happening rather than digging through some finished games past years later. I'll be describing exactly what the closed alpha is or was like, both for those itching to get their hands on it, and for the far future when y'all will want to look back at Rocor's development. Chances are by the time you get your hands on Rocor, it'll have evolved a bunch since this video. So bear with me as I try to keep the warning as future-proof as I can. The build I'll be mostly focusing on is the first closed alpha playtest of Rocor. For some parts of the video, I'll be downgrading to an earlier private build of the game. Let's check out the Ramrod. There are 3 main areas available with a bunch of offshoot ones. We first start in one of the 4 dwarf cabins, which lead into the main hub. This is where dwarves will first see each other and decide on what run they want to do. They are then greeted by a unique drop pod, which uses badass lasers for drilling into the caves. There's a small room above the drop pod which seems to be used for diagnostic purposes. Then back to the main hub, there's an incline leading to a jukebox and a makeshift gym, with the punching bags staying true to their name. There's also a decline leading to a medical room. This place gives me the impression that dwarves are put back together rather than patched up. Then we have an engine room where this giant piece of machinery is housed. And I mean, this thing is huge. One can guess this is the ship's punch drive, which is mentioned on PSA screens throughout the ship. Otherwise, there isn't much else to see in this room, aside from loose cargo and a tunnel leading under the drop pod. Although there is the server room, which is a reference to Ghost Ship Games' real server room, tucked away in a random small room just like this. And you still can't get this damn door open. The first room to get introduced through updates is the ship's cockpit. Yeah, laugh it up. Featuring a myriad of control panels and a nice green glow coming from Hoxes. Leading into the cockpit is a long hallway filled with various machinery, wires, and tubes. How could I forget? The mysterious blue light. Throughout the ship, there are these cameras tracking the nearby dwarf's position. The theory is that Omega is watching you for these, since it'll react to you dancing.
Is this operation a game to you reclaimers?
Lastly, we had exactly 3 kickable objects which seem to have been placed here as tests, especially since they have some crazy physics. Now, as a bonus, if we move our camera all the way over here, we'll see a bunch of untextured hallways under the map. These random blocked off rooms give me the impression that eventually you'll be able to explore the entire ship, even the bathroom. Hey, maybe someday I'll do a Ramrod evolution, who knows? In terms of customization, there's not much one can do here. You can pretty much decide between 4 classes and what enhancements to equip. Most of the enhancements feature fairly basic upgrades, like increases to max health, max armor, crit chance, etc. The ones that do stand out a little bit are the health regen threshold enhancement, faster interactions and revives enhancement, and reduction of movement penalties, stronger throwing, and damage resistance while carrying. Yep, that last one is one enhancement. The way you unlock enhancements is through chips. The way you get chips is by acquiring XP, and you get XP by simply completing levels of any given run. Speaking of which, there's 3 runs available here, Facility 1 through 3. At this time, they kinda act like difficulty sliders actually, meaning that Facility 1 consists of 4 levels, less and weaker enemies, meanwhile Facility 3 has 6 levels plus tougher and more enemies, making Facility 2 the middle ground option, kinda. Then we got the 4 classes. Spotter, who is able to directly tag an enemy for super crits and lay down a radius where anything passing through gets tagged for crits. Slicer can simply perform an extremely strong melee attack, kinda like a super power attack. Guardian can toss a shotgun blast of balls which stuns enemies, and is able to produce a field around himself that forces enemies to step back. Falconeer or Falconer, able to send out a bird that surveys the area and deals electrical damage, plus has heightened senses. Otherwise, all dwarves by default have 170 health and 30 armor. That's right, shields are replaced by armor, and the way armor works here is it'll absorb 50% of incoming damage and won't regenerate. As for the Bio Booster decks, we were stuck with Mixed Tactics and Tinkering for Falconer, Mobility and Big Crits for Spotter, Footwork and Carnage for Slicer, Protection and Devastation for Guardian. Feel free to rewind and pause to get a good look at those upgrades. Now it's time to drop down into the caves. The first thing you gotta do is set up the barrier drones and then stand in a sphere to tear the barrier open. Shortly after walking through the barrier, the drones will explode and fall apart. Then you'll be greeted by an abandoned mining facility. You're first able to get one full sensual lick on the door as it opens. Inside, you can claim your first weapon and traversal tool, or the flare gun for some reason. Both of these pools are pretty limited as to not give you anything too crazy from the get-go. After leaving the structure, you'll be introduced to the threat level, which I just call the wave timer. From here on out, small groups of enemies will spawn at all times. The wave timer itself will display when 2 large waves of enemies will emerge. Once the timer maxes out, it'll turn red and spawn endless hordes until you either perish or escape. It takes around 10 minutes for the threat level to max out. Otherwise, the dwarves will be preoccupied with mining Expenite to earn upgrades, collecting security cameras where each camera gets you a 5% XP bonus, completing a selection of events to earn more Expenite while spawning more enemies, search for bio boosters, which will select 2 upgrades from one of the decks that you have equipped, search for the workbench and its toolkit to upgrade a weapon, search for resupply pods to replenish 50% of armor and ammo, or start a 1-minute holdout sequence as dwarves wait for the elevator to power up. The cave layout is very linear, contains 3 rooms back to back. The second or third room will feature the elevator. Spotting out the variety of things you can find is made very easy by the fancy terrain scanner the reclaimers get. It's heaps better than whatever the miners are given. The caves have a decent variety of random structures one can come across. The most common in this version was the scaffolding surrounding a rock. At the very top of this, you'll usually find either a workbench, a bio booster, or a resupply pod. Similar can be said for a bunch of these structures, all having a chance to contain a reward inside. Hey, we also got those abandoned mines. It's an idea the devs had all the way back for DRG's pre-alpha. It even has the pre-alpha box in there, for some reason. A static turret is another neat structure that can be found. In even earlier builds, there was an IFG and a lure variation. A weirdly useless structure at this time was this bunker. You can find a button that will open it up and lift its contents up above, except it has absolutely nothing of use. Well, I guess there was that one time when a bunch of Expenite fell in there. The Expenite upgrades would greatly vary in their usefulness as with most roguelikes. With 3 players and up, you'll be given more upgrade options to choose from. Everyone will always have the option of increasing and restoring their health. In terms of how many upgrades there are, as I flash through a bunch of upgrade screens, let's just say after a handful of runs, you'll already start seeing a ton of repeats. I should also note that for the first level, you'd be able to find an additional weapon, equipment, or a grenade crate. As for the elevator, it leads you to the next level, in case it wasn't obvious. But before getting to the next level, all players gotta ready up, which will start the risk vector vote. Here, everyone gets to decide on what bonus and mutator to get for the next level, except the mutators will keep stacking up until the very end. I find this to be a neat way of increasing the difficulty per level, and a little peek at what they could do with Endless Mode. For the next bunch of levels, the dwarves will continue to accumulate upgrades and fight for their lives until eventually reaching the final level. Yes, I've been playing on Facility 1 for this video, but more importantly, the final level is purely set up for a boss fight. You're able to find about 4 resupply pods and some cameras. Otherwise, the rift gate is patiently waiting for you to summon the boss already. Caress each of the 3 rift rocks. This is probably giving you machine event flashbacks, and then the boss fight will start. This tall boy will emerge with 3 phases to its health bar. Its moves include shooting a bunch of projectiles in a circle, shooting a purple ball that expands and deals a ton of damage, and the other typical edge stalker stuff like running away fast and shooting at you. You gotta toss the core into the rogue or the rift stone into the gate. And once the final stone is tossed in, the boss fight will float into the hole in a very stupid manner. And it eventually fades to the results screen. On average, I'd say one full run lasts a little over an hour. Depending on your playstyle, they could easily be made shorter. I aim to get as many upgrades as I can in each level. Facility 1 runs being the shortest at around 35 minutes, hence why I chose them for the video. And you've undoubtedly seen the funky new region in the later levels. For the first 2 levels of any run, you'll see parts of the old biome sort of infected by the deep core region. From level 3 and onward, the regions will be entirely engulfed in deep core elements. A strange, mysterious region. All the Reclaimers know is that they must stop it from spreading. So that's pretty much how a run goes, aside from a few details. Like the artifact. If you vote for it during a risk vector, a Sentinel Spectre will appear in the next level. After triggering it, it'll unleash a very freaky sound the longer it lingers. After a certain point, it'll start summoning enemies, so you gotta be quick about it. Once defeated, it'll drop an artifact for the REPD to crunch down on. Artifacts offer an entirely unique set of upgrades, some of which can greatly alter your playstyle. It's kinda like overclocks but for dwarves. And just like overclocks, you will see a clean one giving you small stat boosts across the board, or you'll see something like this. Yeah. As for the creatures, I'd love to go into more detail about them, but my tools for this video are quite limited. Basically, I have 0 dev builds to work with. The core spawn have a bunch of glyphid equivalents, like grunts, guards, praetorians, acid spitters, and such. 2 of them in particular like to enter a defensive pose, which will greatly reduce your damage, but one only needs to find a way around this little inconvenience. Edge Stalkers are a ranged enemy that keep their distance and try to snipe you down. Rafkan don't care rammers float around the caves and then charge at you when they get far enough. Shatterclaw Slammers hang around the cave ceilings and attempt to ambush you. They usually get shot down before getting the chance to do that. Krizok Spawner creates a bunch of explosive ticks that rush down dwarves. You'd really want to get that spawner before the ticks get out of hand. And the most overlooked enemy, Fulgor Vomiter, that kinda launches a bunch of goop occasionally, and that's about it. What? The Cave Leech? Oh yeah, we had that. What a terrible decision for a game with a huge emphasis on rushing. Especially when taking any damage feels a lot more punishing than it does in DRG. I assume you future people don't have to put up with that anymore, right? Now, here's a quick rundown of each Expenite event. Excavation or Geode Processor. First, activate the scanner to get an estimation of what geodes are buried, then you can jump in there and start digging. Get as many geodes as you can on this flimsy elevator and then insert them into the machine. Once the geode is peeled clean, you can then toss the geode into the ground to break it open. Usually 5 geodes will contain a decent deposit of Expenite, 1 will contain an Expenite chunk, another one a ton of red sugar, and 1 will summon a wave of enemies. In what order you'll get these geodes is purely random. Scale Garage or Cargo Bay. For this event, you gotta toss a bunch of barrels onto a giant pressure plate to open the door. It even counts any dwarves standing on the platform. Once opened, you'll find a box that'll contain an Expenite chunk. Defense Point or Secure Container, where you stand around in a green bubble to let the progress bar fill up. You'll be rewarded with a wave of enemies during the event, and with an Expenite tube at the end. Escort or Ram Hammer. You first press a button and then stay near this contraption as it rolls back. During this event, a bunch of enemies will spawn. Once it reaches the very end of the tracks, it'll reveal a button on its back. After pushing this button, this thing will then slam back into the rock, revealing an Expenite chunk trapped inside. Hard rock breaking or Expenite monolith. After pressing the button, the machine will start cracking the rock open, and it'll summon a continuous wave of enemies throughout the event. The machines will break down often, so they need to be closely maintained. Once finished, you'll be rewarded with an Expenite chunk. Contained Entity or Test Subject. For this one, there's a green bulk detonator trapped within a force field. The goal is to release this bulk detonator and then kill it in a tight spot. Its initial explosion will cover the surrounding area in a thin layer of Expenite. Admittedly, this event has some interesting lore implications. And 2 offshoot things. On rare occasions, something like free Expenite-infused loot bugs will spawn, each of them dropping over 50 Expenite on death. And not much of an event, but there are a bunch of broken down mules one can find and repair. Each mule will drop 12 Expenite. Now, getting to weapons and equipment. There's a bunch returning from DRG with a brand new paint job, and not just metaphorically, such as the Striker pistol. It's meant to be an extremely buffed up version of the Subata. Nice try, Tim. Otherwise, we got the Warthog, the Stubby, PGL, Leadstorm minigun, Thunderhead autocannon, Bulldog revolver, GK2, M1000, Drak, Boomstick, Zhukovs. A bunch of these weapons have their default stats altered to better fit Rogue Core and the player's expectations. Not to mention the zipline launcher can get a turbo stat, which makes it go turbo, and the platform gun has the Plascrete Mark II upgrade applied to it by default. We also had the grapple hook, shield generator, satchel charge, and even flare guns, for some reason. Otherwise, we can finally get to the Rogue Core exclusive weapons and equipment. MM4 Charger, a neat pistol that does exactly what the name suggests. It charges up, although it doesn't have to be fully charged to fire. Shock Striker, when shooting and successfully hitting a target, it'll produce a bunch of electrical arcs aimed at nearby creatures. It'll then start passively recharging, meaning that it'll continuously recharge in the background as you're doing other things. Once more, it doesn't need to be fully charged to shoot. Oh, this weapon also has the best gunsling animation that I just cannot stop myself from doing. Cadena Field Pro produces a neat, shield-like projectile, dealing moderate damage to anything it comes into contact with. It's really good against weaker enemies, but when it comes to the stronger ones, best it can do is provide the supporting damage, at least from my experience. P96 Mag Blaster, an energy assault rifle, shoots cool energy bullets, and that's about it. There's nothing that special about it, it's just a nice weapon, and sometimes that's all you really want. The Devastator. It carries very limited ammo, but for good reason, as each bullet explodes in a decently sized radius and deals devastating damage. It's kinda the equivalent of a pocket carpet bomb. Hammercaster. Acts like a hard-hitting rifle with enormous caliber bullets. It's a massive clunky thing, but a very powerful one, and a bonus gun for you. The Portable Nuke Launcher, utilizing a Hurricane's model. In the first playtest, it had an incredibly low chance of appearing. But to put it blunt, it's an insanely broken weapon that kinda wasn't meant to be shown yet. Sorry, my RNG wasn't good enough for me to actually get it in mission. Onto the new equipment. Sympathy Tether. Deploys a huge pink dome. If you shoot any enemy within the dome, it'll transfer a percentage of the damage to the rest of the enemies inside. A very powerful tool. The only real downside is that enemies will hesitate to cross into the dome, so you kinda want to encapsulate a bunch of them with the initial throw. Biotransmutator. Deploys a small orange dome. Anything killed inside of it will drop red sugar, making it very ideal for when a bunch of swarmers gang up on your team. Combat Cocktail. Provides with a massive temporary boost, jump height increase, and recoil reduction, all at the cost of 25 health. Ends up getting mostly used for its psychotic movement capabilities. Every speedrunner's dream. Alpha 2 has released during the making of this video, and I might as well give y'all a taste of what the closed alpha updates were like. Also, I was low-key waiting to see what direction they're going so my criticisms don't die on arrival. The armor system was reworked. Now when you take damage, it will no longer instantly take a chunk of your armor. Instead, it will drain over time to the amount of damage you've taken. Remember when I said that armor absorbs 50% of incoming damage? Exactly. While it's draining, you can still take advantage of the damage absorption. Taking tons of hits in a short amount of time is less punishing in Alpha 2. Each of the classes were given unique icons and perks, as opposed to just Falconer having heightened senses. She was also given Field Medic. Spotter has Hover Boots and Second Wind, Slicer Dash and Born Ready, Guardian only having Deep Pockets. But his armor did get a new coat of paint. You can now just check what the Bio Booster decks have in-game. Like the armor upgrade and protection was lowered to 18. Devastation got its grenade upgrade replaced with an entirely unique one called Aftermath. Explosives leave an area that continuously deal damage over time, adding a little more oomph to the grenades and PGL. Carnage had temporary health swapped out for Stone Skin. The only difference is that Stone Skin is put on top of armor, so it'll get hit first before anything else. The Ramrod saw some changes in Alpha 2. There was a large door added for the cockpit's hallway, and Omega acts as the ship's bartender with some test animations playing at all times. When taking the camera outside of the map's bounds, a lot has changed with the blocked off rooms. In fact, most of them are gone. The green sphere was replaced with a blue glowing Omega? Otherwise, the bathroom was luckily not removed and a new room was added below the punch drive. When carrying one weapon, you'll be given a passive item in the second slot that'll increase your maximum ammo by 75%, making ammo a lot more manageable with one weapon. Oh, and they removed the grapple hook in Alpha 2. The melee system was reworked. Whenever the pickaxe is used for attacking a creature, the dwarf will enter a melee attack mode of sorts. It simply increases the pickaxe swing speed in hopes to make melee a bit better. And yeah, there's a unique pickaxe animation when entering this mode. In Alpha 2, they added a big chunk of upgrades for dwarves and a set of upgrades for Cooper. No longer is it just a static 5% damage increase each time you upgrade. Makes for a neat small dynamic to choosing upgrades in solo. Tons of cool structures were put in. Remember how I commented about the pillar scaffolding being the most common one? In Alpha 2, it no longer is. But I've been seeing this one with the Akira-style elevator a lot. In fact, seems like they really like putting this elevator everywhere in Alpha 2. Plus, the in-mission elevator now actually looks like the one seen in the loading screen cinematic. In Alpha 2, whenever a dwarf gets left behind, they'll then be encapsulated in a rock of some sort. They can be rescued by shooting each of the 5 orbs attached to the rock's vines. 4 orbs if 2 are left behind. Although the area will be guarded by something like 3 tentacles. To put it blunt, they kinda act like scarier stabber vines. Some of the existing events got adjustments made to them, like the test subject having a proper but early model for its container. And the ram hammer getting all sorts of small changes. It now has 2 sideways moving elevators and some extra neat details for the button on its back. And leaving the biggest for last, they added 4 prototypes for Expenite Events. Expenite Transmutator Experiment. After activating it, the goal is to bait a bunch of enemies into the green field and kill them. With each kill, a counter above it will go up. At the end of the event, the field will then turn into an Expenite chunk. The amount of Expenite the chunk has depends on how many enemies died inside the field. Data Drone Hunt. A bunch of Boscos will fly around the caves. They need to be destroyed and their data analyzed. After analyzing about 5 drones, a location will be revealed on the terrain scanner. Reaching the location will yield an Expenite chunk. Vault Hack. After starting it, a wave of enemies will spawn and 4 exposed nodes will be revealed via blue lights. Approaching any of these nodes will place a machine on top of it. The dwarf then needs to stay near it until the bar fills up. Although leaving the defense bubble will not reset the progress, only pause it. After each node is hacked, the terminal next to the vault can be interacted with again, revealing an Expenite chunk. Connect cables. I should note this event was removed in later Alpha 2 patches. When finding this massive structure, you then should look around the area for smaller pods. The smaller pods then can be connected to the large one. Once all of them are connected, the big pod's glass will open to let out the Expenite chunk. Alright, that wraps up the rundown. Now I'm gonna give my review of the current state of the game, followed by a bunch of rants, meaning you'll finally get to see that side of me. I'm talking the side of me that can rant about the Forge's unskippable animation for longer than I'd like to admit. Generally, so far I do enjoy Rogue Core. It has a decent selection of upgrades for an alpha, and a nicely sized arsenal of new equipment. Although I feel like the devs might have not realized the game's full potential. Not yet anyway, which makes sense because we haven't even reached the early access stage. With that said, I am concerned with the game's replayability. After doing just one run, I kinda feel burnt out for the day. I've experienced a very similar issue with deep dives. The Expenite upgrades do remedy this issue to a point, but you still have to do the same slow mining, the same events. We'll get to that rant really soon. Each run I was left wondering what crazy setup I'll get. But then comes the time when you gotta do it all over again. Sure, it's normal for roguelikes, but the effort you need to put into getting those upgrades in Rogue Core feels a bit dragged out? Prolonged? I am not sure. Maybe I simply need more time with the game. I will say that Rogue Core's closed alpha is a lot more replayable than DRG's closed alpha was. Well, at least DRG's ran better. They better fix that shit before it gets worse. Before I get to my rants, I want to tackle the elephant in the room, talking about those endless complaints that this game looks too much like DRG. The game still takes place in the same universe, so of course the art style isn't going to be vastly different. This is a spin-off game. What are you expecting? Personally, I'm glad they give you another point of view on what goes on inside Hox's, adding just a bit more depth to DRG's universe. Gameplay-wise though, it would have never been able to work nicely with DRG. Not only would it have been a huge headache for the devs to balance this game mode around DRG, but Rogue Core's pacing is jarringly different from anything DRG has to offer. I've time and time again seen veteran DRG players, myself included, struggle with Rogue Core's pacing and ammo management for the first hours. In DRG, you want to see everything there is to see. In Rogue Core, most often you won't have enough time to get every piece of Expenite. Sandwiching Rogue Core with DRG and then hoping that nothing explodes was simply out of the question. With all of that said, I am about to toss a couple of bones to Rogue Core's haters unintentionally. I feel like they haven't broken out of DRG's limitations enough. Pulling the wool out of my eyes for a second, this is just a minimized version of escort duty. This is fixing mini-mules all over again. This is find a lost pack event with extra steps. Yet another maintain machinery objective as it tries to do a thing. There's even more, and it's getting quite tiring. And frankly, I want to see you guys go fucking crazy with the objectives. I know the game is in very early development as of this video, but the fact is that I'm a reclaimer doing the same minor things all over again. There's much to recycling happening from DRG already, and it kinda makes me nervous that some developers seem to be fine with having repeat objectives. Sure, there are cases where these returning objectives have been changed enough to be justifiable, like the Geode event. It boils down to the Aquark objective from DRG, but it has a really neat spin to it where you don't really know what each geode will result in. That Rizzler thing that spawns those explosive ticks? Those work so wonderfully for Rogue Core and would be much too disruptive in DRG. Likewise, the Cave Leech does a wonderful job of keeping the team together in DRG. In Rogue Core, this bastard is just an occasional major nuisance. It might as well lower my max health for the rest of the fucking level. Why not come up with something new like you did with the Rizzler? The point is, stop recycling so much from DRG and go nuts. Make a massive cannon the reclaimers can power up that'll then block off some core spawn rifts. Or let me set up a massive laser that's manually controlled and wipes out waves of enemies, where teammates can help me out by replenishing the batteries so I can keep the core spawn occupied for longer. Put in a hilariously awful computer you have to interact with and solve problems onto as others run around looking for the computer chips to make the stupid thing run faster. The thought of these elite dwarves having to put up with awful technology is so much funnier to me than yet another 10-second dad joke that'll get old by the third time you hear it.
Fear will never hurt me.
This is a brand new game, and it's exactly the time to experiment to your heart's content. Give me something different than DRG. Do something that'll surprise even an asshole like me. While I'm still on the roll here, I might as well ask, why is the flare gun in the game? Why should one teammate sacrifice their traversal capabilities for a barely useful tool? To be fair, the flare gun isn't that useless, but it looks a lot more questionable when you put it in the same category as the platform gun and the zipline launcher. I'd suggest finding a new take on a flare gun, like providing with traversal capabilities while also lighting up the place. Or simply give each reclaimer a mini flare gun. That'd be kinda neat. It should have very limited ammo, something like free flares. I don't know. This is arguable, but the drills kinda don't see as much use in Rogue Core than they did in DRG. Since there is a rush incentive, the platform gun and turbo ziplines are a lot more desirable. I'd suggest giving the drills a dash move of sorts. This would allow reclaimers to quickly ram through tunnel dirt, dash into the cave's walls, and dash through some enemies for a tiny bit of damage. You can just keep imagining what kind of things you could pull off with an ability like that. Another problem is that a lot of movement issues from DRG are still here, like sprints getting stopped over minuscule things or swinging a pickaxe slowing you down. I feel like these issues will get even more annoying in Rogue Core due to its rush mentality. Next up, I feel like there's a lack of true co-op this time around. At times, it was already a little lacking in DRG due to having to support solo mode. It feels even more lackluster as everyone scatters all over the caves and one dickhead decides to run to the last room from the get-go. About the only co-op you'll get from these early playtests is discussing what upgrades to get. Well, good luck doing that in rando lobbies. And the Guardian's ult ability, which synergizes beautifully with the Slicer's attack. The issue is that's pretty much as far as synergy will go at the moment. I think you guys should push co-op further. Why not add some co-op elements to the events? There's a common trend in both DRG and Rocore that with more players you can get the objectives done faster. For the geode event, you could add the funny little crane that a fellow reclaimer can use to get the geodes out faster. This would add a neat dynamic for co-op and would give solo players an alternative option to the finicky elevator. I am glad to see small elevators getting progressively replaced with larger ones in Alpha 2. Those small ones are just anti-co-op. Some of the upgrades are too situational. I am glad they got rid of weapon-specific upgrades from the pre-alpha. They gotta push it a bit further though. Those dumb upgrades that require all these checkmarks to trigger have to go. Like in general, not just in Rocore. As if I wasn't taking enough shots, now's the time to take a shot to the head at the core spawn design. I do like fighting freaky guys this time around, but their variations simply do not stand out enough from one another. You can make the guy as big as you want, but he'll still kinda end up being a gray blur, whereas Glyphids ended up being such an iconic design. You could turn off colors from most of them and you'd still know which Glyphid it is. I will toss the artists a bone and say that new players probably have trouble differentiating between guards and slashers too. To that, I will ask you, the viewer, if you had trouble differentiating Glyphids at first or if you caught on to it pretty quickly. Because when it comes to core spawn, I am starting to differentiate them at the 70th hour mark. Aside from the Scorcher, that one was pretty obvious. Annoying bastard. Lastly, when I heard that Reclaimers are meant to be the best of the best dwarves, please do not make them sound like a bunch of goofballs again. Not saying they should be overly serious, no. Just that you wouldn't expect for some motherfucker who was probably born in the caves with decades of experience to sound like this.
This place gives me the heebie-jeebies!
If I can't get you guys to do a different voice for each class in Rocore, you know, something you wanted to do for DRG, at the very least make them sound like a Reclaimer. Fuck it, hire me to do a shitty nerd dwarf for all I care. If that stuff sounded a bit harsh, just know that I rant because I care. And that you can destroy limes in this game. Well, that about does it. I really urge anyone who gets into the playtest to share your feedback, because nothing will change if all you do is complain within your funny little private communities. Usually, I like to get freaky and show you all sorts of unused content, but the game is heavily in development at this time, and any piece of unused content I show you right now will straight up be the equivalent of leaking future updates. I'd rather wait a while after the early access launch before I go around flaunting that stuff about. What I will do, however, is show you a screenshot from a pre-alpha build of Rocore, which I'd like to talk about in the future. Now let me end this with a little song. Remove the cave leech, remove the cave leech. It just sucks, and it doesn't even suck my dick. Come up with something new for Rocore. That's how I ended.